Welcome to the Dark Academicals, the podcast where we delve into the mythos of dark academia, one book at a time. I'm Sophie Waters.
And I'm Sarah Purnell. And today we're looking at The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. The Maidens by Alex Michaelides is a dark academia literary thriller about group therapist Mariana, who recently lost her husband in a tragic accident. She's called to Cambridge University by her niece Zoe, who is studying there after Zoe's best friend Tara is found murdered. Mariana becomes embroiled in the mystery of the murders at Cambridge and takes it upon herself to investigate the case and prove that the murderer is the charismatic Greek tragedy professor Edward Fosca.
So this is the second time I've read this book, and I was a bit dubious as to whether I'd enjoy it as much the second time, because obviously it is a thriller and it's got like the big reveal and the mystery aspect, and I knew I'd be looking at it with a magnifying glass. Well, I definitely picked up on some things that I didn't pick up the first time round. I still really enjoyed it, but I know that is very different to how Sarah felt.
I can appreciate why people like it. I don't know. I don't know, for me, it just had a lot of hype.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting more from it, and then it didn't give me that.
That's fair enough. I think it also is a little bit misleading because it's marketed as a dark academia literary thriller.
Yeah.
And I guess it is a thriller, and I don't read many thrillers, but it's not kind of as twisty and dark as I would kind of expect from the genre.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd call it literary, honestly.
No, I didn't find anything unexpected. I was expecting to be like shocked and like find some really, the ending twist is big, but like it didn't shock me. I was like, oh, okay.
See, it did shock me the first time I read it. Obviously, I knew what was coming the second time. And I could, it was a lot more obvious piecing it through the novel that way. But the first time I read it, I was shocked.
So if you haven't read The Maidens, this is probably a good time to do a spoiler alert, because we will be talking about all the twists and all the turns. So if you haven't read it and you don't want to be spoiled, then maybe go and read it and then come back. We'll wait.
So before we dive in, we're just going to give you a brief content warning for this book. As I'm sure you can expect from the summary, there is murder, death, blood, violence, quite graphically in some bits, and there's also mental illness, child abuse, domestic abuse and stalking in here. But if you want the full list of trigger warnings, you can go to the story graph for The Maidens, and that kind of details everything in there, and you can have a look over that before you get stuck into the book. But without further ado, I guess we should dive in and see what makes The Maidens a dark academia title, if it is at all.
If it even is.
It's a big question. Okay, so our first tenet is, as always, a higher education setting. And we can give that a big solid tick.
Yes.
Because it is set at Cambridge University. So, obviously, like, our parenthesis to higher education setting is often on campus and usually elite or exclusive in some way. And aside from the beginning, it is all on campus, isn't it, really?
It is.
Or just outside in the pubs and the cafes around Cambridge.
I think interestingly though, with this one, even though it's set on campus, it's not necessarily concerned with like the student aspect, like the student life aspect.
No.
That we would normally kind of look for.
Yeah, that's true. There's not an academic side to it. There's not studying. There's not kind of the explorations of topics pertaining to dark academia. There's not any of the, I guess, the nitty gritty of the higher education setting.
Mariana's already been there and done that.
Yeah, so she's 36 or 37, I think. So she did study at Cambridge, but she's obviously come back for Zoe, who is studying. But we don't really know what she is studying. She has a Greek tragedy class, but
no,
I don't remember her ever saying what she actually studies, and we don't ever go with Zoe
to
class.
We go to one lecture, don't we?
Oh yeah, we go to one of
But it wasn't really.
Fosca's.
Oh, it must have been one of her classes. It just felt a bit weird because it was kind of like, oh, let's go to this class. It's always full. Like, surely it can only be as full as it's subscribed.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be.
that didn't make sense. But yeah, he definitely took some liberties with everything, I think. Like,
Yes.
procedures across the board were had some creative license.
I think that's probably where, because I am a bit of a stickler for certain kinds of details, so when I saw those, I was like, don't know.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously with Cambridge Uni comes old Gothic architecture. That's a big tick on that one. I think like as soon as Mariana arrives into Cambridge and she approaches St Christopher's, which is the college at Cambridge, that Zoe studies at, and that Mariana and her late husband Sebastian, who will become more important later, visited. Like, she says something about like the mix of Gothic, neoclassical and Renaissance architecture, I think. But I think most of the talk about Cambridge is of the protection of it.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it had like a presence per se, in that sometimes the architecture does in a Dark Academia
Yeah,
novel,
it's not a character in the novel, is it?
No.
It's a backdrop.
Yeah, and I think because it's well known though as well, your brain automatically fills in
Yeah,
what it knows about Cambridge or what it expects to find at Cambridge.
that's
so
true. It's quite lazy writing, actually, isn't it? Letting just the reader's brain fill in the details of what should be quite an important element. But okay. I don't think I've ever been to Cambridge.
I can't remember if I have or haven't.
Because I've been to Oxford, so I kind of just...
Assume it's similar.
Yeah, just put them together. So next up is a preoccupation with classical studies. And this is a definite yes. But also, but in a different way to usual.
Yeah.
Because while we have Edward Fosca as the Greek tragedy professor, and that plays in a lot, I think the biggest issue, it's not an issue, the biggest theme that runs through is kind of Mariana's idea that it's a Greek goddess that is kind of punishing her for something.
Yeah.
Was it Demeter?
Yeah. Demeter and Persephone, isn't it?
Yeah. Because she thinks she hears the goddess laughing when she's searching for Sebastian on the beach of Naxos, which he goes swimming and he drowns on holiday in Naxos in Greece. And Mariana's Greek, grew up in Athens. So there's lots of links to Greece and Greek mythology.
Yeah. There is also the postcards that
Oh yeah.
that appear with every victim, written in ancient Greek.
Yeah, and a quote from a tragedy. I can't remember which one it is.
I think it varies, doesn't it?
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we don't actually get the kind of class setting, the analysis, the kind of placing Greek mythology over the actions of the characters and the story.
It's almost like we are on the outside looking in at a Dark Academia novel, like from where Mariana is placed. Because like, if you imagine, if you centered it, even if you had Zoe as the main character or one of the maidens as the main character, and then you'd have like Edward Fosca as like the hero worship type character, and then obviously he's got this thing about the whole ritualistic aspect of that was to do with Persephone as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's Persephone, yeah.
Yeah, this whole cult, like, transcendent experience that nobody knows how you reach it anymore, but he knows some of the secrets. So it's almost like we're watching, almost like everything that we kind of look for in a Dark Academia novel happening, but it's not happening in the novel that we're reading.
It's outside.
Yeah.
Or inside, I guess.
Yeah.
That's true, actually. I'd not thought of that, but that really is what this novel is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as well, you obviously have The Maidens, the title of the book. But my issue with that is the book's not really about the maidens.
No.
I mean, they just get killed off.
But if it was, like, if one of those, like I said, was the central character, then I think we'd have
That
a much
would
more
be Dark
stronger
Academia.
argument for a Dark Academia book.
Yeah, definitely. Mariana is an interesting, like, focus character. And I don't think for Dark Academia, I don't think that was the right perspective.
No.
It would be an interesting element, like, if you were inside the maidens and there's this woman, you know, accusing your professor, and that would be an interesting angle from there, as with Mariana as an antagonist, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of, there are lots of things Michaelides does in this novel that pushes Dark Academia away instead of bringing it in, which, considering it's marketed as a Dark Academia thriller, is interesting.
I mean, obviously, he wrote the book that he wanted to write without
of course,
going, this was Dark Academia, but obviously the publishers went, Dark Academia, we can sell this.
I mean, it worked because, you know, we read it for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I read it last year as well, before the podcast was even a thought. Yeah, it's a strange one, that the classical element here.
Yeah.
But I do really like the idea of the goddess kind of overhanging and, like, picking on Mariana.
I think it could have gone deeper.
Yeah, easily.
I think that there's almost too many strands.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many things that, for me, again, looking at it from a Dark Academia perspective, like, from just generally from a nerd perspective, I really liked all of the different strands. But like, from a Dark Academia perspective, there's almost too much, because obviously you've got the overarching thing of Demeter and Persephone and this kind of story of life and death, and I quite enjoyed that. But then also there's a lot of talk about Agamemnon and Iphigenia and Antigone.
Yeah.
And then Tennyson keeps coming in and out of it quite a lot, which is a odd element in with the ancient Greek.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I think it needed to kind of drill down on that one thing, and that kind of permeates everything and, like, infects everything.
Yeah.
I think that is true Dark Academia with the classical element, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that, you know, it's inextricable from the plot and the characters.
Yeah.
And we don't find that in the Maidens. But what we do find in the Maidens is a whole lot of murder.
Oh, there's a whole lot of murder.
So much murder.
There's a lot of violence towards women.
There is.
In the pages of this book.
Yes.
And it was another thought that I had, that actually there is a comparison made by, I can't remember who says it, but basically how the maidens are like Tennyson's 10 apostles or whatever. Like,
oh, okay.
I can't remember who says it in there. Somebody says it. But yeah, and then they said, oh, but obviously the maidens are all female. But I don't know if it would have been more interesting if either it was a mix of male and female, or all male even. I don't know. I was a little bit uncomfortable with perpetuating this kind of idea of violence happening to women.
And the idea of like it's all young, impressionable women under the influence of one charismatic, powerful man who is,
Yeah.
in a position of power over them, over their education, their lives. And that is actually brought up in the novel as well, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I think Mariana confronts Fosca, and Fosca's kind of brushes it off with like, well, women are smarter.
Yeah.
As if that justifies what it turns out to be. Big spoiler if you're still here and haven't finished the novel and care about spoilers. Turns out that he's obviously sleeping with each of them.
Yeah.
And it is that gross misuse of power.
And it still is that gross misuse of power at the end when you find out the twist.
Yeah.
Because even though it's not
way.
it's not Fosca killing these girls, it's still kind of the influence of a man over a young girl.
A young girl, yeah. So again, another big spoiler. It's actually so Zoe is committing the murders, but under the influence and the kind of plan that her and Mariana's husband Sebastian had put together, because Sebastian and Zoe had been sleeping together since she was a young teenager, basically.
Yeah.
15, yeah. And they kind of were planning to get rid of Mariana, and this was kind of, even after Sebastian died, this was how Zoe kind of took it forward. I did find it really heavy-handed, actually, on a second read, how every time the murderer was referenced, it was used as him.
Yeah.
There was no they, there was no doubt, there was no anything. It was him. It was like, we couldn't possibly think of a woman doing that. Which, again, on a second read was really heavy-handed. I think it would have been more natural to use they, or to at least say there's a doubt here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, although I guess it would have been different for you, because I listened to the audiobook, and the chapters from the murderer are read by a man.
Oh, are they?
Whereas Mariana's is read by a female. And interestingly, obviously, Edward Fosca is American, so his speech and narration is read in an American accent, but the murderous chapters were read in an English accent. So I do wonder how much of a different experience that is that way. Because obviously in the text, you just can't tell.
No.
There's no kind of indication, but the audiobook, it already says, well, it's not Fosca.
Yeah, I always find that an interesting kind of take in audiobooks when they specifically like gender certain bits of the narrative, because when you read it just on your own, you're obviously not going to, well, you make assumptions, but you're not going to read it in a voice that's not your own, basically. So
yeah, but you're relying on the text telling you, aren't you? Not the narrator. So you know from off the bat, but it also does also kind of go, well, it could be this person, person, but it is Sebastian. Kind of explaining his motivation and giving his life story of how he became evil, basically.
Yeah,
it's like a villain origin story, isn't it?
Yeah,
alongside the main thread. But you didn't like that bit, did you?
What?
So remember, was it one of his that you said, oh, this chapter's only 2 pages long and I'm already fed up of it?
No, it wasn't.
Was that
actually
one of him?
No, that was Mariana.
Ah, okay. More on Mariana later.
I did struggle a little bit with those sections though too. I did end up kind of skimming them in the end because I just felt like it was just rehashing the same kind of torment over and over.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I get that's the whole point of why Sebastian was having his say, was kind of like, this is why I'm like this. And people often, when they are motivated to do bad things, they kind of want to go, oh, it's because of this. This is why I'm like this. But also, I don't know.
But Zoe didn't get her say, did she? When she was the one actually doing it.
Not really, no.
Interesting.
I also, I don't fully understand why, well, now we're talking about murder, why Mariana felt the need to specifically go and see the second girl. Like, why did she have to go and see...
Oh, go and see the body.
The body.
Yeah.
Because it didn't add anything other than we saw her mutilated body on the page.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing that it added.
And Mariana being ill about it.
She wanted to go and see it, and then she didn't want to see it, and I don't really know what that added for her.
Is it just female violence on the page, isn't it?
Yeah.
For no real reason. So this is something we were talking about during the week, and it was like the female gaze versus the male gaze.
Yeah.
In novels, and specifically in Dark Academia. And just thinking back to like other novels, we have seen grisly scenes. But I do wonder if it changes the feel of it. It's a man writing a woman viewing violence against a woman.
I think it does. I think it definitely... It makes my opinion very difficult to pick apart.
Yeah.
Because I'm not entirely sure of the perspective or the motivation or the kind of impetus behind certain choices.
Yeah. I think that's a running theme with Mariana as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the portrayal of and characterization of Mariana.
I think with the second girl, and it's going to really bug me that I can't remember what she's called. That's really bad. Is it Veronica? The second girl? Yeah, Veronica. Yeah. She says when she she goes under the police tape, she gets through with Julian. Julian aids her to go and see the body of Veronica, and she goes, and there it was. It was the most horrible thing Mariana had ever seen. She felt afraid to look at it. It didn't seem real. And that made me really uncomfortable. And I don't know if it was just obviously just a choice, because that is quite a shocking way to describe it. But I don't know, as a female, like, obviously I can't generalize for all females, but I just feel like maybe as a woman, Mariana might have more of a different way of thinking about another woman being mutilated.
A child, almost.
Yeah.
I mean, she's only 18, isn't she?
Yeah.
18, 19.
Yeah.
Like, that's visceral enough. Yeah. It's definitely that's something we're definitely going to have to continue to unpick, I think, as we look at these novels, is the difference and the power of like a male versus a female lens.
Yeah.
Because it does complicate things, and it does change the way kind of characters are read and situations are interpreted, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On from that cheery subject to a dark, moody and or haunting vibe. Yep, to all of the above.
Yeah.
It definitely had those, but at the same time it wasn't particularly atmospheric.
No.
I didn't... Like, I could see that it was moody and dark and tense, but I didn't necessarily feel it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just hovering like a cloud. Because obviously you've got the murders, you've got kind of Mariana's increasing anxiety about her patient Henry, who we are going to talk a little bit about later on. You've got her kind of trying to look after Zoe, her grief over Sebastian, and all of those are big, heavy topics. But they did still feel a little bit superficial to me. You know,
I think it was, for me, it was a case of she's almost stretched too thin. for you to fully kind of empathise with her, I think. I think because she's so changeable, though, as well, because she'll go from being like, oh, I can't possibly, my grief won't let me do this, to, oh, this is fine.
Yeah. Then we've got hero worship of a particular figure or author. Talked about this a little bit. It's definitely Sebastian and Fosca, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. From actual physical people that are being kind of hero worshipped. But like I said, there's a lot of Tennyson worship.
There is a lot of Tennyson.
I don't think I've read much Tennyson. I can't really say
I haven't either.
if I'm much of a fan, but yeah, Tennyson pops up quite a lot.
Isn't there like that? She feels like someone's watching her and she turns around and it's like the statue of Tennyson. Which is actually quite creepy. And she talks about how beautiful he is or something.
Yeah, there's a portrait, isn't there?
But yeah, I don't really know enough about Tennyson, to be honest. But he, I do know that he was grieving, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Like, is it In Memoriam? And that plays a large part in the novel, doesn't it? Especially with Mariana, who kind of connects with Tennyson's process of long mourning.
Yeah.
Because didn't it take him like 10 years to write or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Something crazy. But they also, Mariana and Zoe, worship Sebastian.
Yes.
Or the Sebastian that Sebastian creates.
Yeah.
To hide that he's actually evil, kind of thing. In the same way that Fosca does, really, just not to the same extent.
Yeah. Fosca, I had an interesting epiphany about Fosca, but maybe we'll talk about him later when we look at characters. But
okay. Intriguing. But I think what's interesting about both of those characters, before you even know, well, for me anyway, before I even knew the reality of who they were and what they were doing, I didn't buy into the charisma of them.
No.
I didn't
Not one
buy
bit.
in. No, I didn't buy into the worship. It wasn't seductive in any way. It was just icky.
Yeah. I was getting increasingly frustrated with Mariana, how she would say things like, oh, I'm very good at reading people. I can listen and I know when they're lying. And then with Fosca, she's like, oh, he just seems like a nice guy. I'm like, what?
I know.
Are you mad?
And also,
he is Red Flag City, and yet she's like, this is fine.
Exactly.
I mean, I know eventually she kind of comes around to the idea that there's something amiss, but at
also,
first.
Sebastian, she was literally married to the guy.
That's true.
And Zoe. Like, everyone around her is not who they seem.
No.
Fred is the only kind of
Fred's
straight up.
Another strange character. It's a very strange addition. Is he just thrown in there just to save her life at the end?
I think so.
How does he find her?
God knows.
Because the ending for me, again, it was just a little bit ridiculous. In that I reread parts of it because I was like, I'm not fully understanding what's happening here. She seems to be running away from Zoe through the undergrowth, while Zoe is just doing that calm horror film killer thing, but just walking behind her with a knife and just explaining everything until eventually she falls over.
Yeah.
And then Fred appears. How does Fred find them?
God knows.
There's something suspect about Fred.
He is a little bit creepy, so I wouldn't be surprised if he tracked her, you know?
That's true. Honestly, I thought that Henry was going to come to her rescue. I think that would have been I think that would have been better for Henry's character as well. I think he would have possibly got some kind of, at least some temporary respite or solace from that.
Yeah. Yeah, but he took that in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have old money, which will collide with new money or no money. A little bit in kind of Sebastian's like discussions about his family growing up with no money, and obviously Mariana grew up with money, and her dad has a lot of money, and she inherited it, and kind of Zoe crows that's why Sebastian stayed with her, kind of thing.
I mean, Sebastian still manages to go to Cambridge. I know, obviously, student loans and things like that, but like, course, it's still generally, it's a lot harder if you come from no money to be able to go to Cambridge.
Definitely. So it's briefly mentioned, but I don't think it's not a significant part of the novel or the character, really, is it?
No.
It's kind of just thrown in there. I guess they need a legitimate reason to be able to buy that house in London.
Yeah, that's true.
Move straight on to weather as a literary device. I think this is another yes but no. For most of the novel, no.
Yeah, I mean, when weather plays its part, it tends to be quite obvious. Yeah. It's not like a seamless kind of... It's not seamlessly in the narrative and then things happen because of the weather. It's almost like... I think it even says at one point, doesn't it? Like, the weather was very fitting. Like, I can't remember. It's near the end, isn't it?
Yeah, so literally just before the kind of the big showdown, almost immediately the weather changed. As if responding to events in college, summer, having held on for so long, finally withdrew. A chilly wind hissed through the courtyards. It started spitting rain, and in the distance, a thunderstorm could be heard rumbling. It's
very... a bit heavy-handed.
Yeah, it's very heavy-handed. It's very obvious. Because the weather's not really there. It's just doing what it does. It doesn't have any impact on the story. It doesn't provide a backdrop to anything so much. It's not used to its full potential.
No. I think that's probably why it's suddenly quite jarring when it's like, oh, by the way, there's weather.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, you just assume that it's just grey British weather.
Yeah, just standard. Yeah. Because it's also like a start of a new section as well. Like, goes straight bam, massive thunderstorm, everything's changing. It's too obvious, I think. Our last tenet of Dark Academia is underdeveloped social skills. Our last tenet of Dark Academia is underdeveloped social skills, or the protagonist is portrayed as an outsider. I think to a degree Mariana is isolated by her grief and her lonely upbringing.
Yeah, but she very much has like a found family at Cambridge. Like, she's quickly welcomed back in. Like, she doesn't have any problem. I mean, and she doesn't... I mean... Yeah, I don't think that this applies to her at all.
No, I don't think so. The only thing I could kind of pull out of it is that she is an outsider in believing Fosca is guilty. That's probably true. Stretching it quite far.
Yeah.
But that was the only thing really that kind of struck me about Mariana in that way.
Yeah. I suppose the only thing that makes her an outsider as she kind of investigates this is the fact that she's not a student. So that automatically puts her on the outside in that respect. But like, she's got plenty of contacts and people that know her on the faculty, and she doesn't seem to have a problem socialising or like approaching people.
No, that's true. She's very confident, isn't she, in herself and what she believes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Shall we go on to criticisms?
Yes.
So, Sarah has lots of these. So, go for it.
I think what initially rubbed me up the wrong way was the way that Mariana, as a I think she calls herself a psychotherapist. Is that right?
Yeah.
She doesn't talk very nicely about people with mental health problems. Like her own people that she's trying to treat, she talks about them in a very kind of, it's not derogatory, but like it's
Nearly.
yeah, she almost like invalidates them, and like it's I think she says about Henry at one point that considering his traumatic childhood, he's very clever or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, and like he got into a uni but then dropped out because he couldn't handle it, but he's close to a genius or something like that. Yeah, she repeatedly fails in her duty of care to her patients, doesn't she? In the way she thinks about them, describes them, the way she treats them, and in the way that she doesn't kind of trust her instincts as to, whether this needs to be called up higher,
Yeah.
Especially with Henry.
Henry needed intervention a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And not in like he needs to be locked away. No, he just needed better help that she could not give him.
Yeah.
Basically.
Definitely. In a one-on-one situation.
Yeah. And it escalated to a point that he ended up being hospitalised, sectioned, and then medicated. And I don't think it needed to go there.
It didn't go that far, no.
Also, I don't fully understand what the whole point of Henry's character was, in the way that how it ended for him. So if it had ended in a sense that like Henry had been the one that stepped in and kind of, because obviously it would be the obvious choice. He's stalking her, so why wouldn't he be the one that then like jumps in and kind of saves her and saves the day and kind of has this whole like almost like redeeming moment for himself? I mean, obviously he still needs the help, needs better help, but like it just felt like he was almost like a scapegoat for the reader to kind of go, oh well, it's him, isn't it? Because he's obviously a nutter.
He was a throwaway character to the novel.
And I just think that's a bit damaging for people who are struggling with mental health. And we don't really ever find out what his actual, if he has an actual like diagnosis, I don't think, other than the fact that he has a traumatic childhood. Which again, I don't think is very helpful. It just seems to be like this umbrella term of somebody who is mentally unwell doing bad things.
Yeah, I think there's also, she talks about how, some people who have a traumatic childhood are totally fine, but there's just something wrong or something irreparably broken.
Yeah.
With some people who have a traumatic childhood that makes them, go off the deep end. Like, it's very black and white, very damaging view of mental health. And that is through Mariana as well, considering her profession. And that she's constantly described as being empathetic. And that empathy is her downfall, because she kind of cares for everyone.
No, she needs some.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that she's incredibly selfish.
She is very selfish, yeah.
I don't understand her motivations for going to Cambridge, other than at first, obviously, to go and see her niece. Who, for a long while, we don't even realise is her niece, I don't think. I don't think it's completely clear, the relationship.
No. It's not until she's telling Fred, I think.
Yeah.
That she's there for her niece. Because we don't even really find out why she even grew up with Sebastian and Mariana for a really long time either. It's very odd.
Very odd.
But even when she's in Cambridge, she doesn't really spend much time with Zoe.
No.
Obviously,
try and pump her for information.
Yeah. Obviously, I guess part of that is, Zoe needs time to go and do the murdering. But, yeah, I don't know. Strange relationships in this book.
Very strange.
Like, but strange as in they don't quite make sense. Another thing, it's not necessarily a criticism. It's just something that I noticed because, you know, secret history on the brain. There's a Julian and a Henry.
There is.
And they are very different takes on Julian and Henry.
They're similar but different, aren't they?
They're almost like how Julian and Henry would have been next step along.
Yeah.
Like, and taken out of the 80s.
Yeah.
You know? Or you could see kind of Julian in The Maidens. This is a precursor to Secret History Julian. Or like that cocky, knows everything, will introduce you to this world. Will, don't worry, she's with me.
Yeah.
You know, bringing you into that fold. And I guess Henry, if Secret History Henry didn't grow up with the privilege that he did.
Yeah.
And the control. Just a quick side note there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Secret History parallels, as always.
I mean, there's plenty, isn't there? I mean, there's the whole Maiden's ritualistic aspect is very much like the Dionysian kind of thing they want to evoke in the Secret History. To have this transcendent experience. I'm sure I bookmarked a page about that because I took umbrage with the interpretation. There's the female minds thing. That's lovely, isn't it? I took umbrage to that too. More of Mariana being an idiot. She's just not very... I know we're probably going to talk about her more in a minute, but she's just not very aware for someone who is trained to listen and be aware.
I think she was considerably dumbed down.
It's the bit where he's like kind of explaining the thing, which must... is that during the lecture?
In the lecture, yeah.
About how it's like about life and death, and it says something about how Iphigenia kind of gave herself up to for her country, and must have had this kind of transcendent experience of being on the edge of what it means to be human and life and death and stuff. And
I think no, she was just sacrificed by men for men.
I think what's interesting is the decision to interpret it that way, because a lot of the ancient Greek literature that obviously survives was written by men through a lens of men, without any kind of consideration for how a woman might have felt in that moment. Yeah. So they probably would have just written, she did a great thing for her country.
Well done.
Or, well done. Love. But, I mean, it says nothing about the despair or the rage or the fear or anything that someone like...
She's a set piece.
Yeah, she's a set piece.
I think that's something that, like, with like the boom of Greek mythology retellings at the moment, that female authors are trying to correct.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah.
But it would have been a powerful move for that to be done in this novel.
Yeah.
I think it was a missed opportunity.
I think so.
But yeah, I'm not massively confident about Alex Michaelides' kind of general portrayal of women or feelings about them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit iffy. It's the only book of his I've read. I've not read The Silent Patient.
No, me neither.
Shall we do a deep dive on Mariana?
I suppose so. She just, for someone that comes across as quite clever and quite intelligent in many. You'd assume one would like to assume that as a psychotherapist she has quite a good amount of people skills and emotional intelligence, and yet she seems to have none.
Yeah. She's very trusting and very suspicious, but the wrong way round.
Yeah.
She seems to be trusting of the people that are trying to con her.
Yeah.
And very suspicious of people that seem to be just genuine. Like Fred.
Yeah. Fred.
Yeah, she seems to have everything tied in a knot.
She makes questionable life choices. Like,
yes.
Right at the beginning, when after a group session at her house, Henry shows her how he has self-harmed. And he's obviously exhibiting quite worrying behaviour. And not only does she have no kind of sense of duty of care over him, she's like, bye, have some plasters, please leave, go see your doctor.
Yeah.
She then goes, I probably should lock my front door, but I resisted the urge to.
Which, I mean, she lives in London. That's insane anyway. It just makes
and then
no sense.
you see it again at the end, like her previous colleague Theo now works at where Zoe is being held on a psychiatric unit.
Yeah.
And he goes, I've just got to go and see to another patient. Wait there, I'll be right with you. She goes, how about I don't? Walks right in. Like, what are you walking into other than a silly situation?
Also, she shouldn't really be able to get in.
No, I mean, I'm assuming that's where she's walking in. It doesn't tell you where she's walking into, but you assume she's going into the recreation room to see Zoe. But even Theo as a professional is telling her that Zoe is not the same girl that she knew, and that could mean anything, like literally anything. And I don't know if it's particularly wise as a fellow like works in the same field to then walk into a room full of people who are unknown.
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna with
Yeah, exactly. With one that could have any kind of reaction towards you.
Yeah, it's just straight up not safe, is it?
No,
like for anyone involved.
No.
Yeah. She also does it as well though when she knows that she shouldn't go to dinner with Fosca.
And goes.
Everything is telling her that she should not go. And then there's all this build-up of her walking down the gothic corridors. And the weird setup, she finds the postcard and she's like, oh shit, he murdered someone. And she stays.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. Like, zero sense of self-preservation at any point.
None. Absolutely none.
Which when you're investigating a murder against direct police orders, by the way, I can't think of the word. No, it's gone. Don't have any word. No words. It's just stupid.
It's stupid. Just silly.
She puts herself.
She's gonna. I don't know how she didn't end up dead.
I know. It is a true miracle.
I mean, she follows Morris at one point over a wall. Like,
right.
She clambers a wall to follow the well, he's a porter, essentially, isn't he? Is he a porter? Yeah. To spy on him. I mean, that could have got really dangerous.
Yeah. And when she gets followed along the canal.
Yeah.
Do we ever find out who that was?
No, but it was probably Henry, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, probably. But obviously I don't know Cambridge, but I can't imagine it's very well lit.
No.
Down on canal paths.
I don't fully understand why she runs down, again, like a back path, so hopefully the back gate would be open. Like,
no. That's against everything you're taught as a woman to survive. Because unfortunately, that is a thing that we have to be taught.
Yeah.
But it goes against every instinct. But again, it's a man writing that.
Yeah. At first she does the right thing. She crosses the road to be with that couple. But, I mean, if I was that bothered that somebody was following me, I would have just gone and knocked on their door. You know they're in.
Yeah.
Be like, excuse me, sorry, I'm really scared because I think someone's following me.
Or you intercept them and you have a conversation with them and you kind of try and ingratiate yourself in that group so that whoever's following you thinks, oh, with other people. Wait till they've gone, then you explain. And, you know, like, order a taxi.
Do something, but don't run down the dark alley.
You know, like... But again, I do wonder if that is part of the male perspective there.
Yeah.
Because do men understand the lengths we have to go to in that kind of situation? I don't know. Do they understand what we are taught about, you know, walking outside?
In the dark.
Especially in the dark, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah, basically, Mariana's a bit of an idiot. Quite a lot of the time. Is the verdict here.
Yeah. She also doesn't really solve anything. She doesn't solve anything.
Literally nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, I think she gets credit at the end, doesn't she, for being suspicious about Fosca's relationship with the girls. Is it Detective?
I mean, that didn't take much.
No, I mean, that
was
obvious.
Suspicious from the off, wasn't it? I've got a group of really pretty girls, only pretty girls, young, fertile, nubile women in a special study group.
Which they have private lessons in his quarters.
Yeah.
I mean, immediately sus. But then again, I didn't go to a scary top university like that. Is that a thing? I don't know.
It shouldn't be.
Surely it'd still be office hours, right?
Yeah.
There has to be rules about this stuff.
I don't know.
But then again, does Cambridge play by the rules? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Can't imagine so.
The only other character that I like, I had a mini epiphany about Edward Fosca, and it's the way that he, to me, is described almost like a classic vampire. So when she first meets him, he just disappears, but leaves behind like a wisp of cigarette smoke.
Oh yeah.
And then he does it again, and I can't remember what it's described as the second time, but like, oh, it's the way she feels like he's something like it's like a something about like a bat.
Yeah.
And the way he dresses in his velvet jacket, he's like Lestat from like Interview with a Vampire. With
he's
his
described
longer
as
hair.
dazzling as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like,
She's very vampiric, and then preying on these like young women in white dresses. It's very Dracula-esque, isn't it?
oh my god, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
That's quite an epiphany.
It's like, this guy's a vampire.
Unexpected twist to this thriller. I actually would have liked it a lot better.
What,
if he was a vampire. I mean, does a vampire in a novel ever make it worse? No. Let's be honest. Yeah. Final thoughts? Can you sum it up in a sentence?
Not for me.
No, that's fair. I enjoyed it for what it is. I think a lot could be done to make it better, but it's an enjoyable... Not for Sarah. I found it an enjoyable romp, I guess. But I don't think if you're a seasoned thriller reader, I am not at all. I do not think it will be appreciated.
It says on the back, the greatest campus novel since The Secret History by Donna Tartt.
Excuse you. Where does it say that? Tony Parsons, you're a liar. No, that's incorrect. Who is that guy? Yeah. Oh, here we go. This is on his Wikipedia. His novels typically deal with relationship problems, emotional dramas, and the traumas of men and women in our time. He describes his writing as men-lit, as opposed to the female chick-lit.
No, get out.
I think that tells you everything you need to know. Well, there we go.
Men-lit.
That went off topic. Apologies.
Did.
Is it Dark Academia?
No.
No. Just no.
I mean, at least I can see how it got there with this one. Like, I can see.
Yeah.
It's in the right ballpark, but it's playing the wrong sport.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Definitely. I think as well, thriller and Dark Academia are opposite ends of the spectrum
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Because a thriller is fast-paced, lots of secrets, bam, 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 bam. Whereas Dark Academia is that slow, languid kind of unveiling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are mysteries and there are secrets, but it's just dealt with so differently.
Yeah.
And I think, I just don't think those two things work together in the same way. That's my feeling anyway.
I agree.
Yeah. So that is The Maidens by
Yes.
Alex Michaelides. Next time will be our Dark Academia adjacent novel of the season. And we will be exploring the fabulous Gothic classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
Very excited.
I love this book. Would you like to take it away and tell the people what Dorian Gray is about?
Oscar Wilde's alluring novel of decadence and sin was a success to scandal on publication. It follows Dorian Gray, who, enthralled by his own exquisite portrait, exchanges his soul for eternal youth and beauty. Influenced by his friend Lord Henry Wotton, he is drawn into a corrupt double life, indulging his desires in secret while remaining a gentleman in the eyes of polite society. Only his portrait bears the traces of his depravity.
Yay! I think this will be like my third or fourth time reading this book.
I've not read it.
I'm ready. Have you not?
No?
Oh, you are in for such a treat. I wrote my first essay for my bachelor's degree on this book and my first essay for my master's on this book.
Wow.
We hope you enjoyed listening to us discuss The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, and we hope to see you next time. Bye!
Bye!